Today we'll see locking protocol. In last class we have seen basic locking protocol. Today we'll see various other type of locking protocol. Then these are the chapter contents. First we will see basic locking. What are the problems in basic locking protocol? Then how to avoid those problem we have to modify the basic locking protocol. That's why another protocol came, that is known as two-phase locking protocol. Then in two-phase locking protocol, we will see the concept. One is your lock conversion. Then we will see what are the problems in two-phase locking protocol. We will see. Then to avoid those two-phase locking problems of two-phase locking protocol, there are various other protocols came. Strict 2PL came, rigorous two-phase locking protocol came, and conservative two-phase locking protocol came. All those things we will see in this chapter. Then after that we will see timestamp based protocol. Okay, actually there are various concurrency control protocols are there. One is your locking protocol, then your timestamp based protocol, then your tree based protocol, then your multiple granularity protocol, multiple granularity protocol, another protocol is there, and another one is your optimistic protocol is there. But among these five concurrency control protocol in our course, lock based protocol and timestamp based protocol is there. In lock based protocol, first basic locking protocol we have already seen. In this chapter, we will summarize the basic locking protocol. Then we will analyze the problems in basic locking protocol. Then we will see the timestamp based. Then we will see the two-phase locking protocol, 2PL. Then other type of 2PLs, there are various several types of 2PLs are there: strict 2PL, rigorous 2PL, conservative 2PL. All those things we will see in this chapter. Then after that we will discuss timestamp based protocol. Okay, and this is all about basic locking protocol. In basic locking protocol, whenever any transaction want to do any operation on any data item, suppose a data item is your A, and suppose transaction T1 and T2, two transactions are there. Whenever transaction T1 wants to read data items A, that means before doing any operation by any transaction on data item A, first the transaction has to apply a lock on A. If the transaction wants to read the data item A, then it has to apply a lock, a read lock, or that is known as shared lock. Whenever a transaction wants to read a data item, it has to apply your shared lock. Okay, shared lock. And the command to apply shared lock on a data item is lock underscore S on data item A. That means suppose in this case, transaction T1 wants to read data item A. Before that, it has to apply a lock on this. The command to apply lock is your lock underscore S on A. And this request will go to the concurrency control manager, already discussed in last class. And if no lock is applied on A, then concurrency control manager will grant that lock. Then T1 transaction can read A. But whenever a read lock or share lock is applied on data item, say transaction T1 can read that data items. Transaction T1 cannot write that data items. Okay. Similarly, suppose T2 is a transaction, it wants to write data items on A. Okay. Then before that, it has to request for a write lock or exclusive lock. And the command for exclusive lock is your lock underscore X on A. Okay. This is all about whenever a transaction wants to write on data items, then it has to apply the exclusive lock, and the command to exclusive lock is a lock underscore X on A. And this is the summary. Suppose one transaction has applied shared lock. Suppose T1 is a transaction has applied a shared lock. Then T2 transaction wants to apply a shared lock, then it is allowed. It is possible. Suppose one transaction T1 already applied exclusive lock or write lock. Then another transaction T2 wants to apply a share lock on the same data items, it is not allowed. Similarly, if a transaction T1 has applied share lock on a data items, then at that time transaction T2 wants to apply exclusive lock on that data item, that is also not allowed. Similarly, if a transaction has already applied exclusive lock on a data items and another transaction wants to apply exclusive lock, that is also not allowed. That means whenever any transaction has applied only share lock on a data items, any other transaction when apply the share lock, that is allowed, except that no other what locks are applied on that data items. And all those things we have discussed in last slide, locking protocol slide, in slide number 21. And what are the disadvantages of this locking protocol? Data inconsistency may arise in basic locking protocol in this protocol, and deadlock may arise sometimes. Basic locking protocol, even if we will apply basic locking protocol to avoid concurrency control problem, but sometimes deadlock may arise and it does not guarantee serializability. Sometimes it does not guarantee serializability. We'll see all those things one by one. Now we'll see, this is a schedule 1, and the schedule 1 it deals about two transactions, T1 and T2, and T1 transaction is to transfer 50 rupees from account A to account B, and transaction T2 is display the summary of account A and account B. Suppose initial account A balance is your 200 rupees and initial account B balance is your 300 rupees. And initially, when we will apply transaction T1, it will transfer 50 rupees from account A. That means the balance will be your 150, and it will add 50 rupees on account B. That means the balance will be your 350. And when in transaction T2, we will display the summary or sum of both transaction and transaction B, it will display 500. Okay. In serial manner, in the transaction A balance is 200 initially, transaction B balance is 300 initially. When we will add the content or the amount of both the transaction, then it will also 500. But in this case, if we will apply locking protocol, that means in this case we are reading and we are writing the value of A. That's why first transaction T1 will request for a exclusive lock or write lock. Then as no lock is applied on A initially, that's why a lock will be granted by the concurrency control manager. Then it will read A, then it will update A, then it will write, then it will unlock it. That means lock has been applied correctly. Then similarly, then suppose transaction T2 wants to get the summary of the account A and account B. Then transaction T2 has a request for read lock on B. Then it wants to read the value of B. Okay, it has granted, and concurrency control manager will grant that lock. Then it will read the value of B. Then it will unlock B. Similarly, it will lock A. Then it will read A. Then unlock A. Then it will display the balance of B and A. Okay. In this way, the concurrence schedule get executed. Okay. Then when we will concurrently executed, we have applied here the locks has been applied properly. That means your lock, then unlock. Here it has requested lock, then it has unlock. Similarly, here it has requested lock B and it has unlock B. Okay. Then if we will apply lock-based protocol, whether any problem exists in this schedule or not, we will see that. Okay. And already we have seen this in incorrect summary problem. This is the incorrect summary problem. Incorrect summary concurrency control problem. Already we have seen this. And when we will apply the lock-based protocol, the locks are applied properly. There is no problem in applying locks and unlocking. Then whether incorrect summary problem is there or not, we have to analyze. Suppose initially lock X is applied, then read A. The balance of A will be how much? It will read 200. Okay. Then A is equal to A minus 50. Now A balance will be your 150. Then write A, 150 will be written to the buffer, then unlock it. Okay, no problem. Then lock B, lock on B, yes, it will apply lock on B. Then read B, it will read the value of B, that is your 300. Then unlock B, it will unlock. Then lock S on A, okay, it will apply lock, read lock on A. Then read A value will be 150. Then unlock A, then display B plus A. B plus A will be how much? When B plus A will be 300 plus 150 is equal to 450. Then apply that lock X on B, read B, B plus 50. Now B value will be your 300. Now it will be 350. Then write B, 350 will be written to the. That means after execution of T1 and T2, the A value is equal to 150, B value is equal to 350, and the summary of A and B is equal to for 50. This is a inconsistent result. Okay, that means the data inconsistency is present in this schedule even if we have applied lock-based protocol. That means lock-based protocol sometimes arises data inconsistency problem. That means we can say the lock-based protocol cannot solve the problem of incorrect summary concurrency problem. Okay, this is all about data inconsistency in lock protocol. We have seen this. Okay, now we'll see deadlock in lock protocol. Actually, why this problem arises? In this case, suppose that means suppose transaction T1 is updating some value in two places, and before second update, another transaction has taken calculated the summary of both of the account balance. That's why this problem arises. Okay, deadlock in lock protocol. In this case, we will see, if you will, in this case, that means we are releasing the lock of A yearly. If we will release the lock of A later on, then this problem may not arise. Okay, because here we have applied lock on A, then we have updated a value of A. After that, we are unlocking. If we will not unlock, that means if we will not release the lock on A too yearly, then it may not happen. That's why if we will, what we will do, if we will take this unlock to the last of this transaction, then we will see what problem we will face. Okay, suppose here lock when we will not release the lock on A, here in T2 cannot access the data items of A, so it cannot, but it cannot calculate the B plus A. That means here it will be halt. That means when T2 transaction will execute, then lock S on A, that cannot be executed. Okay, that's why first it will T1 will completely execute, then only T2 will execute, so that such kind of incorrect summary problem will not arise later on. This is the this will be we may get these advantages. Okay, that's why what we will do, whenever we will apply a lock on A, we will not release the lock after completion of A operation. That means at last, after completion of the transaction A, we will release the lock. Then we will see, is the data inconsistency problem arise or not. Okay, in this case, just see, in the same schedule, what I have did, the unlock of A operation from here, I take it to this place. Okay, and suppose here the T1 transaction, it has applied exclusive lock on A. Then read A is equal to A minus 50. Initial A balance was here 200 and B balance was here 300. Now it has updated A balance to be here 150. Write A. Then lock SB, read B. Yes, it will read B. Transaction T2. Unlock B, lock SA. Whenever a lock is applied on a variable by T1, exclusive lock, can we apply a read lock on A? No. That means it will wait here. This cannot be granted. Then again, it will do this, all these operations. Then it will unlock A. Then only it can be possible. That means by doing this, by delaying the release of lock A, we can avoid the data inconsistency problem. Okay, that means the data inconsistency problem can be avoided here. But is there any other problem arises here? We have to see here. Here what happens? The initially transaction T1 has applied lock on A. That means T1 transaction is applied lock on A. That means T1 transaction is holding A. Similarly, in this case, T2 transaction is holding B. It has applied lock on B. Yes or no? Lock SB. And in this case, T1 transaction is requesting for lock B, lock X on B. T1 transaction is requesting a lock on B. And in this case, in this place, T2 transaction is requesting a lock on A. That means here a cycle present. And whenever a cycle present in transaction and resources, that means a deadlock happens. Here deadlock may arise in this case. That means the lock-based protocol, simple lock-based protocol cannot guarantee on avoidance of deadlock. That means using simple lock-based protocol, even if we will use simple lock-based protocol, it in some situation there may be deadlock possible. Okay, this is the second disadvantage of basic lock protocol. Then non-guarantee of serializability in lock protocol. Suppose here two transactions are there, T1 and T2. Here write A operation is there, here read A operation is there, and here write A operation is there. Suppose then we can apply the lock in this way: lock X on A, then unlock A, lock SB SA, unlock A, lock XA, unlock A. That means correctly we can apply the lock protocol. But in this case, just see T1 and T2. Among T1 and T2, is there any conflicting operation? Write A and read A. Yes, it is a conflicting operation. That means first transaction T1 will happen, then T2. That means we have to put a arrow like this. Then in this case, read A and write A. Here also conflicting operation is there. Means T2 to T1. That means here cycle is present. In case of precedence graph, if cycle is present, serializability is not maintained. This schedule is not a conflict serializable schedule. That means conflict serializability is not maintained here. Okay, that means we are correctly applying the lock protocol here. Whenever we are doing any operation, before that we are applying locking, and after that we are applying unlocking. Whenever we are doing any operation, before that we are applying locking, we are applying unlocking, and also we are applying correct lock. When we are doing the write operation, we are applying exclusive lock, and when we are doing the read operation, we are applying the shared lock. Even if we are applying all the lock protocol correctly in this schedule, but serializability is not maintained in this case. Serializability is not present in this case. That means we can say lock-based protocol cannot guarantee serializability always. That means it may serializability problem may occur in case of lock-based protocol. Okay, these are the three problems we have discussed in lock-based protocol. First one is your data inconsistency may arise. We have seen with example. Deadlock may arise. We have seen with example, and it does not guarantee serializability. To avoid these disadvantages, what the computer scientists have did, they have did some changes in that basic lock-based protocol. In the another protocol they have implemented, the name of that protocol is your two-phase locking protocol. And what is a two-phase locking protocol? In two-phase locking protocol, what they have did, whenever a transaction requires a lock, that means whenever a transaction requires a lock, that means it will apply all lock sequentially, then only it can unlock. Okay, the phase at which it will apply locks on data items, that is known as growing phase, and the phase at which it releases all the locks from the data item, that is known as shrinking phase. That means suppose two transactions T1 and T2 are there, and T1 is reading some data items A, writing some data items, then it is reading another data items, suppose read B, then writing another data items. That means suppose here read and write operations are there, then we have to apply exclusive lock X on A. Similarly, after doing this operation, what we were doing, we were unlocking here, unlock on A, but this two-phase locking protocol tells that you cannot unlock in this place. First you apply lock, then at last you have to unlock. That means here it has a request for data item B. That's why here it will apply lock X on B. Then after that it will unlock B and unlock A. The phase in which a transaction applies lock on the data items, that is known as growing phase. And the phase in which transaction releases the lock, that means unlock operations are performed, that is known as shrinking phase. And it has been seen that in two-phase locking protocol, always serializability is maintained. We'll see that. Two-phase locking, first point is two-phase locking protocol is a protocol which ensures serializability, and this protocol requires that each transaction issues lock and unlock request in two phases. The two phases are growing phase and another one is shrinking phase. In growing phase, a transaction acquires all required locks without unlocking any data. That is, the transaction may not release any lock. And in case of shrinking phase, a transaction releases all locks and cannot obtain a new lock. And the point in the schedule where the transaction has obtained its final lock is called a lock point. That means, suppose this is the time and this is the lock when it will apply lock and unlocking. Okay, suppose the transaction T1 has applied lock till this place. This is the final lock. This is known as lock point. What is lock point of a transaction? It is the point at which the transaction put its final lock. Okay, that means this is obtained its final lock. A transaction obtained its final. The point in the schedule where the transaction has obtained its final lock is called the lock point of the transaction. And transactions can be ordered according to their lock points. Okay, we can sequence the transactions, or we can serially order the transactions using the lock point. Suppose T1 and T2 transactions are there. Suppose lock point of transaction T1 is present here, lock point of transaction T2 is present later on. Then we can say that the serializability order of transaction T1 and T2 is T1 then T2. Understood? We'll see all those things. And in this case, here two phases are there. Initially, suppose starting of the transaction, then it acquires lock till the lock point. Okay, lock point means it is the final lock which is acquired by the transaction, particular transaction. After final lock is reached, it will unlock each and every lock till the end of the transaction. Okay, and this phase is known as growing phase, and this phase is known as shrinking phase. Okay, now we'll see one example. In this case, just see T1 and T2, two transactions are there. Sorry, another transaction we will see. In this case, that means here it wants to read A and write A. That means it will apply lock X on A. Similarly, it wants to read B, then it will apply lock S on B. Actually, after reading and writing of transaction A, it cannot unlock here. That means it is a two-phase locking protocol. In two-phase locking protocol, first we will apply all the locks whenever required. Then at last we will unlock. That means lock X on A, then read A, write A. Then it requires lock S on B. Okay, it will apply. Then after that it will unlock and it will unlock. That means first this phase is up to this phase. That means it is applying locking. That is your growing phase. Then it is your shrinking phase. Here it is unlocking. And which is the lock point here? In this case, the lock point is your lock S on B. This is the final lock which has been applied by transaction T1. That's why this is your lock point. Understood? Similarly, in transaction T2 here, lock X A, read A, write A, unlock A. In this case, only one lock is there. That's why this is your lock point. And in this case, one lock is there. This is your lock point. Then in this case, what will be the serializability order of transactions? T1, T2, T3. Because according to the presence of lock point in each transaction of the schedule, we will serialize the various transactions of the schedule. That means the serializability order of this schedule is your T1, then T2, then T3. Accordingly, the transaction lock points are present. Okay. Okay, growing phase, shrinking phase already you know. Okay, now we'll see lock upgrade and lock downgrade. What is this? Lock upgrade and lock downgrade. Actually, lock upgradation is generally present in your growing phase. Okay, when the transaction is applying locks, then lock upgradation can happen. What is lock upgradation? Suppose two instructions are there. One is a read A1, another one is a write A1. Initially, when one transaction wants to read A1, wants to execute read A1, then it will apply a read lock on that data items. But lock S on A1. Okay, after reading that, it has to write that. Then to write that, it has to apply exclusive lock on that data items. Okay, and this is known as your lock upgradation. That means it has initially applied read lock on A1. That means share lock on A1. Then it has applied exclusive lock on A1. Okay, this is your lock upgradation. Okay, then after that it has unlock A1. Okay, similarly, in lock downgrade is generally seen in your shrinking phase. That means when a transaction unlock the data items at that moment, we can see this what a shrinking phase or lock downgrade. Suppose initially it wants to read A1, then it has applied exclusive lock on A1. Okay, no problem. After that, suppose it has to do the read operation in some places, then it has to change that lock to, suppose it has applied exclusive lock on A1. Then after that, whenever it wants to read that items, then it will make this lock exclusive lock to your shared lock. Because why it will downgrade the lock? Because at that moment, at the same time, suppose other transactions wants to read the data items, if it requires a shared lock, then other transactions can apply a shared lock on the data items. That's why sometimes downgrade, lock downgrade is what people use lock downgrade, because whenever we will apply one lock, what a shared lock on a data items, then other transaction can read that data items. Okay, that's why whenever we don't require any exclusive lock on a data items, we will downgrade the lock. That means we will make the lock to your shared lock so that other transactions can use that data items. Okay, but if exclusive lock we will keep throughout the transaction, if we don't require this exclusive lock throughout the transaction, but we will apply exclusive lock throughout the transaction, then even if another transaction T3 wants to read that data item, that cannot read that data item. Okay, that's why whenever it is not required to apply exclusive lock on a data item, the transaction should downgrade the data item, they downgrade the lock. That means it should downgrade the lock from exclusive lock to your shared lock. This is known as lock downgrade. The lock upgrade is generally seen in your growing phase, and lock downgrade is generally seen in your shrinking phase. Thus, the two-phase locking protocol with lock conversion first phase can acquire a read lock on an item, then can acquire a write lock if required, then can convert a read or write lock to a read lock to lock X. Okay, suppose a data items is there and a transaction T1. First, suppose it wants a shared lock, then it will apply a shared lock on the data items. Suppose after that it wants exclusive lock on that data items, then it will upgrade this what lock from shared to exclusive lock. In second phase, can release a lock S, can release a lock X, and can convert a lock X to lock S. That means downgrade. That means like the basic two-phase locking protocol, two-phase locking with lock conversion generates only conflict serializable schedule, and transactions can be serialized by their lock points. Okay, if the exclusive locks are held until the end of the transaction, then the schedules become cascadeless. Okay, that means whenever two-phase locking protocol is applied on any schedule, that means two-phase locking protocol is applied on any schedule, by default the schedule will be your conflict serializable, and the serializability order will be what we will get the serializability order of the schedule from the lock point. Okay, now we'll see two-phase locking does not ensure freedom from deadlock. Okay, actually in case of locking protocol we have seen data inconsistency problem was there, deadlock problem was there, then another problem was serializability was not guaranteed in case of basic locking protocol. That's why two-phase locking protocol came, but two-phase locking protocol always guaranteed serializability. We have seen that serializability, but here it is telling that deadlock may be a problem in case of two-phase locking protocols. Let's take one example and we will see. Suppose one transaction T1 where write A operation is there, then write B operation is there, and here T2 transaction is there, write B operation is there, write A operation is there, then the transaction other operations are there. Here it is not unlocked till now. Here also it is not unlocked. That means it is your growing phase, and this is also growing phase. In growing phase, some problem may arise. Okay, what is deadlock? In this case, T1 has applied a exclusive lock on A to perform this write A operation. That means we can say T1 transaction is holding exclusive lock on A. Similarly, here T2 transaction has applied write lock on B. That means T2 transaction is holding a write lock on B. Then in some places after some time T1 transaction is requesting for lock on B. T1 transaction is requesting a lock on B, and here T2 transaction is requesting a lock on A. That means here one cycle is present. That means deadlock may happen in this case. That means we can say even if we are applying two-phase locking protocol in this schedule number 5, it may result to a deadlock. Okay, this is the one disadvantage of your two-phase locking protocol. Now, another problem is that cascading rollback may be present in case of two-phase locking protocol. Suppose here another schedule 6 is there, T1, T2, T3, T3 transactions are there. Okay, suppose here lock XA we have applied, then it has a read write A, then lock SB, read B, then unlock A, unlock B. Okay, two-phase locking protocol is correctly applied. This is your growing phase and your shrinking phase. Then in this case it wants to read A, write A, that means it will apply exclusive lock on A, yes, then unlock A. It has also here also two-phase locking protocol is properly applied, and in this case it has read it wants to read A, that's why it has applied a share lock on A. Okay, then suppose after execution of this many of instructions, suppose failure happens here, then what happens? It has to be rolled back. T1 has to be rolled back because no commit operation is executed till now. That's how it has to be rolled back. Similarly, T2 has to be rolled back and T3 has to be rolled back. That means cascading rollback is possible under two-phase locking protocol. That means so even if we are applying two-phase locking protocol for concurrency control, to avoid the concurrency control problem, but cascading rollback is possible in this case. This is the problem in two-phase locking protocol. Okay. But serializability maintained in this case. That means in this case, just see, we have to find out the lock point. What is a lock point of a transaction? The point at which the transaction gets its final lock. In this case, it has applied lock on A, it has applied lock on B. This is the final lock. That means this is the lock point. In this case, only one lock is there. This is the lock point. In this case, only one lock is there. This is your lock point. Okay. The order in which the lock points of various transactions appears, from that we can get the serializability order of transactions. That means in T1 first lock point appears, that's why T1 transaction will execute it first. Then T2 transactions lock point appears, then T2 transaction will execute it. Then T3 transactions lock point appears, T3 transaction. That means the serializability order of T1, T2, T3 is this order: T1 first, then T2, then T3. Okay. That means in two-phase locking protocol, serializability is maintained always. Serializability is maintained always, but deadlock problem may happen. Deadlock is not assured. A deadlock all may happen in two-phase locking protocol, 2PL, and another is your cascading rollback. Cascading rollback may happen because we are not committing all the transactions. That means so whenever cascading rollback will not come, if transaction T2 reads a data item which will be committed by transaction T1, after commit operation of transaction T1, if T2 reads the data items, then cascading rollback may not happen. Okay. In this case, in two-phase locking protocol, deadlock and cascading rollback are the problems. Okay. That's why to avoid this deadlock and cascading rollback, we have to modify the two-phase locking protocol. That's why another two concepts came. One is your strict, another one is your rigorous, another one is your conservative 2PL. Okay. First, we will see what is strict. Cascading rollbacks can be avoided by modification of the original two-phase locking protocol called strict two-phase locking protocol. And in this protocol, a transaction must hold all its exclusive locks till it commits or aborts. That means in this case, why cascading rollback came? Suppose here we will execute a commit operation. If I will do the commit operation, then when failure occurs, it will not roll back, because here already it will save the database state, and those database data items has been used by T2. Then there is no need of rollback this transaction. And if commit operation will executed here, then no need of rollback this transaction. Okay, that means before reading any data items by transaction T2 or before unlocking these what data items of transaction T1, if we will execute the commit operation, then such kind of cascading rollback problem will not happen. Okay, in this protocol, a transaction must hold all its exclusive locks till it commits or aborts. Okay, that means the strict two-phase locking protocol tells that whenever a transaction is applying any what exclusive lock, here it has applied exclusive lock on A, and here it has applied read lock on B. Read lock, it is not telling about read lock, it is telling about exclusive lock on A. Then it will release the lock. That means it will execute this unlock A after execution of commit A. That means after execution of commit A, it can unlock A. If you not execute commit A, then it cannot execute unlock A. That means it will not release exclusive lock on A. Okay, this is your strict schedule. If such kind of condition is present in a schedule, then we can say that that is a strict schedule. Now we'll check whether this transaction T1 is a strict, it follows strict two-phase locking protocol or not. Here lock SA, read lock on A is there. That means we can unlock this. Okay, here where is the right lock is there, we have to see here lock X on B. This is your right lock. That means we cannot what we can first we have to see whether it is in 2PL or not. In two-phase locking protocol, all the locks appear first, then unlocking appears first. Here you see first lock, then unlock, then unlock. That means it follows your 2PL. 2PL is maintained in this case. Then you see whether strict 2PL is maintained in this case or not. For strict 2PL, whenever transaction T1 applies a write lock, exclusive lock, it cannot unlock before execution of commit statement. Here it is unlocking, but commit statement is not there. That means strict 2PL is not maintained in this case. In transaction T2, we will see whether it follows 2PL or not. Lock and unlocking in order. That means growing phase, lock SA, lock XB. Okay, locks are there, then unlocks are there. That means two-phase locking protocol is maintained here. Then we have to see strict two-phase locking protocol. Okay, for strict two-phase locking protocol, we have to see the exclusive lock. Lock X on B. This is the only exclusive lock. Then it can unlock. This exclusive lock can be released. That means it can be unlocked only after execution of commit B, commit operation. Here it has been executed commit, then it has unlocked B. That means two-phase locking protocol is strict two-phase locking protocol is what maintained in this case. Understood? Okay. Now we'll see rigorous two-phase locking protocol. It is rigorous two-phase locking protocol is even more stricter than your strict two-phase locking protocol. What it says? It tells that in this protocol, transaction can be serialized in the order in which they commit. Most database systems implement either strict or rigorous two-phase locking protocol, which requires that all the locks be held until the transaction commits or aborts. In strict two-phase locking protocol, what we have seen, a transaction can release a exclusive lock after commit statement, but rigorous two-phase locking protocol tells you that it can release any lock after commit or abort statement. That means in this case, whether T2 transaction is a rigorous two-phase locking protocol or not, we will see, because your lock SA, this is a read lock and this is a write lock. Okay, and here read lock SA is there. Okay, read lock, and here write lock, and any unlocking of A and B is possible after commit statement. That means it follows rigorous 2PL. Okay, in this case we will see, suppose whether it is 2PL or not, two-phase locking protocol, it supports two-phase locking protocol or not. First we will see, first lock, unlock, unlock. That means it supports two-phase locking protocol. That means lock will be first present, then unlocking is present. That means it supports two-phase locking protocol. Then we have to see whether strict two-phase locking protocol is present in this case or not. For strict two-phase locking protocol, whatever exclusive locks are there, we have to see lock X on B. Then we can release the lock on B after execution of commit statement. On lock of B, yes, commit on B. First commit statement is executed, then unlock B is executed. That means it is in strict two-phase locking protocol. Now we'll see a rigorous two-phase locking protocol, whether it is in rigorous two-phase locking protocol or not. What is a rigorous two-phase locking protocol? All the locks will be unlocked after commit statement. Here unlock of A is executed, but before that no commit statement is executed. That means it is not in the rigorous two-phase locking protocol. Okay, then how it will be rigorous locking two-phase locking protocol? If unlock will be present here, unlock of A will be present here and commit statement is present here, then it will be a rigorous two-phase locking protocol. In this case, we will see whether it is a rigorous two-phase locking protocol or not. Yes, it is a rigorous two-phase locking protocol because here read lock is there, write lock is there, and both the locks are unlocked after commit statement. That's why it is a rigorous two-phase locking protocol. Okay. Now we'll see conservative 2PL. What conservative 2PL tells? Conservative two-phase locking protocol requires the transaction to update all the locks before it starts and release all the locks only after commits. Okay, that means it is more stricter than strict 2PL and your rigorous 2PL. Why? Because suppose one transaction is there T4 and it requires read and write operation on B and it requires a read operation on A. Whatever data items it has to do some operation, first it will apply lock on all the data items, then only it will start execution. Okay, that means first it has executed on A as well as B, then first it will apply lock on A and B. It wants to read A, that's why it will apply a share lock on A. It wants to write B, that's why it will apply a exclusive lock on B. Then after that commit statement should be there, then only it can unlock the data items, unlock A and unlock B. Then such kind of schedule is known as conservative 2PL. Okay, then we will check whether this schedule is a conservative 2PL or not. First we have to check 2PL. Locks are present first, then unlocks. Okay, 2PL is present. Then strict 2PL. Strict 2PL tells that whenever one exclusive lock is there, then the exclusive lock can be released. That means unlock of B we can do after commit statement. Unlock of B after commit statement, yes, it is in strict 2PL. Then rigorous 2PL, whether it is in rigorous 2PL or not. For rigorous 2PL, any lock, that means it may be a read lock or write lock, the unlocking will be possible only after the commit or abort statement. Your commit statement is there, after that unlocking of A and B is done. That means rigorous 2PL, it supports rigorous 2PL. Then conservative 2PL, whenever, whether conservative 2PL is supported in this case or not. For conservative 2PL, whatever data items are present in the transaction, first it will apply lock on all the data items. Then after the operation, it will execute the commit statement. Then it will apply the unlocking of all the data items. Okay, it is supporting. That means conservative 2PL is supported in this case. Okay, this is all about various types of 2PL, two-phase locking protocol. Okay. In case of strict 2PL and in case of rigorous 2PL, actually cascading rollback is not present because in both the cases what happens, cascading rollback is not present in both the cases. Why cascading rollback is not present? Suppose T1 transaction is applied some lock on any data items, then it will unlock after commit. After commit, it can unlock the data items. Okay, that's why when T2 transaction reads any data items, okay, and if any failure occurs here, then it will not roll back, and whatever data items T2 has read from T1 transaction, that are also consistent data items that are present in the database, that has updated in the database. That's why here cascading rollback is not possible. Okay, not create a problem in case of strict and rigorous 2PL, but deadlock may present in strict and rigorous two-phase locking protocol. How deadlock is present? Suppose T1 is a transaction and T2 is a transaction, and write on A, then write on B, write on B, then write on A. Sorry. Okay. Suppose such kind of schedule is there. S1 is a schedule. Suppose here it is a schedule. S1 is a schedule which is of such kind of instructions are there. Then it will apply lock here, lock X on A. Then it will apply lock X on B. Okay. Then several transactions are there. Similarly, it will apply lock X on B, and here it will apply log X on A. In this case, so what happens? Okay, after that several instructions are there, and after T1 several instructions are there, T2 several instructions are there. Okay, this is your growing phase. I am telling about the growing phase only. In this case, suppose T1 transaction is holding lock on A, and T2 transaction is holding lock on B. And T1 transaction wants a lock on B. That means T1 transaction wants to use B, and T2 transaction wants a lock on A. That means your cycle present. That's why deadlock may happen in case of strict as well as rigorous two-phase locking protocol. But in case of conservative two-phase locking protocol, deadlock will not appear. In case of conservative two-phase locking protocol, deadlock will not appear. Why? Because first, it will apply lock on all the data items. That means lock XA and lock XB. Okay, then only it will start execution. That means the conservative two-phase locking protocol works like a serial schedule. Okay, first all the transactions, all the instructions of T1 get executed, then only all the instructions of T2 get executed. Okay, but in real time, most of the strict schedule are used. Okay, most of the schedules are strict schedules are used. Conservative two-phase locking protocol is not used because it behaves like a serial schedule. That means in serial schedule, the problem is that CPU utilization is not there. That's why whenever we will use conservative two-phase locking protocol, same problem appears. That's why conservative two-phase locking protocol is not used in real time. We'll see timestamp order protocol. Before going to timestamp order protocol, first we will see what is a timestamp. Okay, what is a timestamp? First we'll see what is the difference between timestamp and a time. Okay, suppose whenever one transaction begins in a computer system, a time can be assigned to that transaction. Suppose the transaction T1 begins at 9 a.m. Then this is your time. And suppose transaction T2 begins at 9:30 a.m. This is the computer time. Okay. Then what do you mean by timestamp? Here 9 and 9:30 are your computer time. It means that transaction T1 start first. After 30 minutes, transaction T2 starts. If we will assign timestamp to T1, then it may be 1. Suppose I will assign a number which denotes that transaction T1 start first and transaction T2 starts later. Then I can assign any number. Suppose I have assigned 1 to transaction T1, then after some time T2 has started. That's why I will assign another number 2. Then we can say this 1 and 2 are your timestamp. Okay. And in this timestamp ordering protocol, whenever a transaction generally starts, a timestamp or a number will be assigned to that transaction, and after some time, suppose another transaction starts, then a number greater than the first number will be assigned to that transaction. That means suppose T1, T2, T3, three transactions are there, then the timestamp will be assigned in the order. Suppose I will assign any number. Suppose I will assign 1 to transaction T1. After some time, suppose T2 started, then I will assign another number 2 to T2. And after some time, suppose T3 started, then I will assign number 3 to T3. These are your timestamp. These are known as the timestamp. Okay, and these are generally equivalent to the time at which T1, T2, T3 are started. Suppose T1 starts at 9 a.m. This is your 9:30 a.m. and T3 starts at suppose 10 a.m. What it denotes? T1 start first, after that T2 starts, after that T3 starts, and that can be represented by timestamp. Okay, And what is timestamp? Timestamp TS of TI. Generally, the timestamp of a transaction is represented by this symbol TS, timestamp of TI means transaction. Suppose I will assign a timestamp to T1, then I can write timestamp of T1 is equal to 1. And always every transaction has only one timestamp. Suppose in this case two transactions are there, T1 and T2. Suppose here TS of T1 is equal to 1 and TS of T2 is equal to 2. Every transaction has one timestamp. In this case, this is your another schedule of three transactions T1, T2, T3. In this case, TS timestamp of T1 is equal to 1, timestamp of T2 is equal to 2, timestamp of T3 is equal to 3. Okay. In this way, we can assign timestamp to each transaction of a schedule. The timestamp of the transaction determines the serializability order. Thus, if timestamp of Ti is less than timestamp of Tj, then the system must ensure that the produced schedule is equivalent to a serial schedule in which Ti appears before Tj. What it tells, timestamp ordering protocol tells that suppose T1 appears first, or T1 generates first, T1 begins first, then T2, then the order of execution of T1 and T2 should be in this order. That means T1 will be executed first, then T2 will execute. Or the execution of T1, this schedule should be serially equivalent to this schedule T1 to T2. It should be executed in a manner such that that will be equivalent to this serial schedule T1 to T2. There are two timestamp values associated with each data item. For each transaction, one timestamp is associated. For suppose this is your schedule S1, and for schedule S1, T1 and T2, two transactions are there. Then one transaction timestamp is associated with transaction T1, another timestamp is associated with transaction T2. Similarly, there are two timestamp values associated with each data item Q. Suppose here the data item is your A. For every data item of a schedule or for every data item of a transaction, two timestamps are associated. One is your read timestamp, another one is your write timestamp. Okay. For every data item, two timestamps are associated. For every transaction, one timestamp is associated. For data item, what is a read timestamp? It denotes the largest timestamp of any transaction that executed read queue operation successfully. Suppose transaction T1 will execute this first read A operation. Then what will be the read timestamp of A here? Read timestamp. The read timestamp of A will be here largest timestamp of this transaction. What is the timestamp of this transaction? T1, 1. That means read timestamp of A will be here 1. Then write timestamp of Q, write timestamp of a data item is it denotes the largest timestamp of any transaction that executed write Q operation successfully. Suppose here write operation has been performed by transaction T2. Then write timestamp of data item A is equal to here largest timestamp of the transaction which has performed the write operation. What is the timestamp of the transaction T2? That is your 2. Okay. In this way, we can assign two kinds of timestamps to a data items, and we can assign only one timestamp to transaction. Okay. Then what is the timestamp ordering protocol tells you? Timestamp ordering protocol ensures that any conflicting read and write operations are executed in the timestamp order. If not, such an operation is rejected and the transaction will be rolled back. The rolled back transaction will be restarted with a new timestamp value. What it tells you, timestamp ordering protocol. Suppose here T1 appears first, then timestamp of T1 is equal to 1. Then suppose after that T2 transaction appears, then timestamp of T2 is equal to here 2. Okay. Then what is the order in which transaction T1 and T2 executed in this case? According to timestamp ordering protocol, T1 executed first, then T2 should execute. Okay. Then it tells that all the conflicting operation among read and write operation. Here, what are the various conflicting operation? Here, first we will see read A operation. It will be performed. Then after that, when write a operation will be performed, is there any conflicting operation here? Read to write, read A to write A, T1 to T2? Yes, conflicting operation is there. Then it can be performed or not? It can be performed because it is the conflicting operation among read write operation is in the order of the timestamp ordering. That means the timestamp ordering here is T1 to T2, increasing order. T1 executed first, then T2. And the read write conflicting is T1 executed first, then T2, then it will be executed. There will be no problem. Okay. Then when this write A will be executed, then is there any problem? We have to say. Is there any conflicting operation here? Yes. Write A of T2 to write A of T1, there is your conflicting operation is there. Write conflict. Then the order of write conflict is here is 2 to 1. But the timestamp ordering is here 1 to 2. Then we cannot keep such kind of conflicting operation. When such kind of conflicting order, that means the order of the conflicting operation is not same as the order timestamp ordering of the transactions, then at that moment what we have to do? Such an operation is rejected. That means this operation will be rejected and transaction will be rolled back. That means this transaction will be rolled back and the rolled back transaction will be restarted with new timestamp value. Then suppose after some time, this T1 transaction will be again scheduled. That means what are the T1 transaction? Your read A, then your write A. In this case, just see T2 with timestamp 2. Now this T1 transaction timestamp of T1 will be year 3. Then what will be the timestamp ordering protocol here? In T2 and T1, this T2 and new T1 ordering will be from 2 to 3, okay, or 2 to T2 to T1, okay. In this case, we have to see, suppose a write A operation has performed first, then suppose a read A operation I have to perform, whether this can be performed or not, or it will create any problem according to timestamp ordering protocol. Here, write A to read A is a conflicting operation, but this can be allowed because the conflicting operation is performed in what order? The conflicting operation is performed in 2 to 3. That means the order in which the timestamp order, in that order the conflicting operation exists. That's why this will be allowed. Then after that, write A to write A, another conflicting operation is there. Conflicting operation is there, write A to write A. Then for that, this is also from 2 to 3. That means the order is same as your timestamp order. That's why it will not create problem. That means whenever two transactions are there, T1 and T2, then there is some timestamp order is there. We have to find out the timestamp order. Okay, suppose T1 first executed, then T2. This is your timestamp order. Then we have to find out all the conflicting conflicting operation among read write operation. All conflicting read write operation. If the conflicting read write operations are performed in the same order as the timestamp order of the transaction, then there will be no problem. And whenever the conflicting operation is not in the order of the timestamp of the transaction, then at that moment we have to reject that operation, then we have to roll back that transaction, and we have to assign start that transaction with new timestamp value. Okay, so that it will be serializable and the schedule will not create any problem. Okay, concurrency problem will be avoided using this timestamping protocol. In this case, we will see suppose T1 is the first transaction and timestamp is here 1, T2 is the second transaction, timestamp is here 2. Then now we'll see whether all the operations will be executed properly or not. First, a read A operation will be executed. Then this read A, it is not a conflicting operation. That's why it will not create problem. It will execute it. Then when write A operation has to be executed, whether it will be allowed or not. Is it a conflicting operation? We have to see this read A and write A, is it a conflicting operation? Okay, read A, write A. Then the order of conflicting operation is here 2 to 1. But the order of what timestamping protocol here or timestamp order of the transaction is here 1 to 2. That means it is creating conflicting. That's why this operation cannot be performed. That's why it has to be rolled back. Okay, then it has to be again restarted. This T1 will again restarted after some time. Then what are the operation? Read A and write A. Then this problem will be solved. Now just see here, suppose this is your 3 and I am naming it as T3. Now the timestamp ordering here T2 to T3. Then is there any conflicting operation? Yes, read to write, but the conflicting operation order is your 2 to 3. That's why it will not create any problem. Okay, in this way timestamp ordering protocol works. In timestamping ordering protocol, what we have to do? First we have to find out the order of the timestamp ordering of the transaction. Then we have to find out the conflicting operation, read write conflicting operation on both the transaction. If the conflicting operations are present in the order of timestamp ordering of the transaction, then there will be no problem. If the conflicting operation, if the conflicting operations are in opposite to the timestamping or ordering of the transactions, then we have to reject that operation. Then we have to roll back the entire transaction. Then we have to reschedule that transaction after some time. Okay, this is all about timestamping ordering protocol. But how to implement this? To implement this timestamping ordering protocol, there are various algorithm is there. One algorithm is there, and that has been implemented in this way. Just see. Okay, this is the timestamp ordering protocol. Okay, this is the algorithm. This ensures that any conflicting read or write operations are executed in timestamp order. Okay, any conflicting read or write operations has to be executed in the timestamp order. Okay, suppose transaction Ti issues a read queue. Suppose here I am taking one example. Suppose T1, T2, two transactions are there, and here read operation is there. Here one write operation is there. Here another read operation is there. Okay. Okay, here timestamp of T1 is equal to 1 and timestamp of T2 is equal to 2. And every transaction has one timestamp. That's why timestamp of T1 is equal to 1 and timestamp of T2 is equal to 2. And every data item has two timestamp. Here A has a read timestamp value first, then A has a write timestamp value. Initially, the read timestamp value will be 0 and the write timestamp value will be 0 for every data items. Two timestamps are there. You have to remember this. Then we have to apply. In this case, we have seen what to do if T1, T2 and the transaction order is your order of the transaction is T1 first, then T2 timestamp ordering. Then here this write read conflicting was there, T2 write and T1 read. That's why T1 has to be rejected. Okay, T1 has to be scheduled later on. Okay, then how this algorithm support this, we will see that. Suppose the transaction Ti issues a read queue. Okay, a read operation on A. Suppose transaction Ti means your T1 issues a read operation, read queue. If TS of Ti, if TS transaction timestamp of Ti, that means timestamp of T1, that is your 1 here. Okay, is less than write timestamp of Q. Write timestamp of Q means write is timestamp of Q is 0. If 1 is less than 0, okay, is it true? Then Ti needs to read a value of Q that was already overwritten. Hence, the read operation is rejected and Ti is rolled back. But in this case, Ts of Ti is equal to 1 is less than 0. It is not true. That means it has to be performed. That means this read operation will be performed. Okay. And when this read operation will be performed, then the read timestamp will be here 1 here. Then Ts of Ti is equal to write timestamp of Q or greater than Ts of Ti. Here write timestamp of A is equal to 0. If Ts of Ti means timestamp of T1 is how much? Timestamp of T1 is your 1 is greater than your write timestamp of 1 A is your 0. Then read operation is executed and read Ts of Q is set to maximum of read timestamp of A and timestamp of Ti. What is the maximum? That is your 1. 1 will be set here. Okay. In this case, this read operation will be performed. Okay. Suppose that for this read operation, before execution of this read operation, this write operation will be performed. When this write operation will be performed, the right timestamp of A will be your 2. Then we will check for this read operation will be performed or not. To execute this read on A, in this case, the timestamp of Ti is equal to 1, and the right timestamp of A is how much? 2. 1 is less than 2, it is true. When such kind of situation arises, then Ti needs to read a value of Q that was already overwritten. That means this data items is already overwritten at T2 transaction. Okay. Hence, the read operation is rejected and Ti is rolled back. That means this read operation will not be allowed and it will be rolled back. In this case, it will be rolled back. It will be rolled back means again this T1 transaction will be scheduled later on. That means for this read operation, first read operation, it will not create problem, but for second read operation, it will create problem. That means the entire transaction has to be rolled back and has to be scheduled later on. Okay, this is all about read operation. Now we'll see for write operation. Suppose T1, T2, another same example I am taking here. Read A, write A, then here again write A. Okay, and the timestamp of T1 is 1, timestamp of T2 is 2, and A data items. Suppose first read operation we want to perform. When we want to read up or want to perform, then A, for A the read timestamp will be how much? Read timestamp will be 1, and when this write timestamp I have to perform, I have to check here. Suppose a transaction Ti issues a write Q. That means here transaction Ti means T2. Transaction wants to write. So if TS of Ti, transaction TS of T2, transaction 2 is less than read timestamp of Q. Read timestamp of Q is how much? Read timestamp of A. Read timestamp of A is 1. 2 is less than 1. Is it true? No. Then if TS of Ti is less than write timestamp of Q. TS of Ti means 2 is less than write timestamp of Q is how much? Write timestamp initially is 0. 2 is less than 0. This is also not true. Okay. Otherwise, the system execute the write operation and set write timestamp Q to TS of Ti. Otherwise, that means no write operation has performed. That means this is the first write operation. That means it will execute this operation and the write timestamp of A will be your 2. Read timestamp of A is 1. Write timestamp of A is equal to 2. And for this purpose, whether this operation will performed or not, we will check. Here, write timestamp of A is equal to 2. Okay. Suppose transaction Ti, that means here transaction T1 issues a write Q, means write A operation it want to perform transaction T1. Then the TS of Ti, that means timestamp of Ti means timestamp of T1, that is 1 is less than read timestamp of Q. Read timestamp of Q is 1. 1 is less than 1. It is not true. Then again 1 is less than write timestamp of Q2. Yes, this is true. When such kind of situation arises, then Ti means T1 is attempting to write an obsolete value of Q. Already value of A is written by another transaction, that it has to write again. T1 wants to write that value again. Hence the system rejects this write operation and rolls Ti back. That means this operation cannot be performed. This operation has to be rejected and it will roll back that entire transaction. And again this T1 transaction has to be scheduled later on. Okay, according to timestamp ordering protocol. That means in this way the timestamp ordering protocol works. Okay. But the main thing, the summary of timestamp ordering protocol is that whenever two transactions T1 and T2 are in timestamp ordering, in that order, all the instructions should be executed. That means when the timestamp ordering is your T1 to T2, then the order in which T1 and the whole schedule will be executed should equivalent to this T1 to T2 serial schedule. Understood? Okay. And that has been implemented using this algorithm. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These 5 points are there. Using these 5 what conditions we can implement the timestamp ordering protocol. In this case, we will see. Suppose this is your schedule 3. Sorry. Suppose here this is your schedule 3. Okay, this is your schedule 3. We'll discuss on this first. Okay. Then here there are timestamp of T1 is 1 and timestamp of T2 is 2. That means timestamp ordering is here T1 to T2. Then read operation it will be performed. Then write operation. If we apply the timestamp ordering protocol or algorithm, then it will work properly. But in shortcut way, if you want to see, whenever there is conflicting operation is there, if the conflicting operations are not performed in the order of the transaction, then that will create problem. Okay, in this case we have to find out the conflicting operation. Read a, this write a, there will be no conflict between this, that's why it will be executed, there will be no problem. This read a will create conflict on write a, read a to the write a, this is your first conflicting operation. But the conflicting operation from T1 to T2, that's why it will not create problem. That means it is the transaction order, timestamp ordering of the transaction, that's why it will implemented. Then for this read B to write B, this is also conflicting operation, but this conflicting operation also performed from T1 to T2. That's why it will not create problem using timestamping protocol. Okay. Then here also write A to write A. This is also a conflicting operation. Third, this is also from T1 to T2. Order of conflicting operation from T1 to T2. It will not create problem. Here also write B to write B. This is also conflicting operation. Here also the conflicting operation order is T1 to T2. It will not create problem. That means this schedule according to timestamping protocol, this will execute properly. Okay, no need to what reject any operation, no need to what roll back any transaction, it will properly executed. This schedule 3 is follows timestamping protocol. Now we'll check for schedule 4. In case of schedule 4, what will the order of what timestamp order of the transactions? T1 then T2. Okay, then we have to see first read operation will be performed. Then what is the conflicting operation? This read A to write A, conflicting operation 1. Read A to read A, there is no conflicting operation, that it will be performed, it will be executed. Then your read A to write A, conflicting operation, but the order of conflicting operation executed in T1 to T2. That's why it will not create problem, it will be executed. Then read A, read B, then write A to write A. Here in this case, this is also conflicting operation, but the conflicting operation from T2 to T1, then it will create problem. That means this write operation cannot be executed. For this purpose, we have to roll back the entire transaction T1. We have to roll back the entire transaction T1. Then we have to schedule T1 later on. After T2, after some time, we have to schedule this transaction. Okay. In this way, the timestamp ordering protocol works. Now we'll check for schedule number 5. The timestamp ordering here is here T1 to T2. Okay. Then read A to write A. This is conflicting operation, no problem. From T1 to T2. The ordering of conflicting operation T1 to T2, no problem. Write A to read A. Conflicting operation, but it is from T1 to T2. It will also not create problem. Then read B to write B. Here read B to write B. This is also a conflicting operation, third conflicting operation, but the order is from T1 to T2. That's why it will not create problem. Then write B to write B, fourth one. This will create problem. That's why according to timestamping ordering protocol, this write B operation should not be performed, and the entire transaction has to be rolled back, and this T1 has to be scheduled later on after T2. Okay, according to timestamping ordering protocol. From the above examples, we can say that the timestamp ordering protocol always ensures conflict serializability. Yes, this is because conflicting operations are processed in timestamp ordering. Whatever conflicting operations are there, all has to be performed in the timestamp ordering of the transactions. The protocol ensures freedom from deadlock since no transaction ever waits. Okay, it is freedom from deadlock. Deadlock free is there. However, there is a possibility of starvation of long transactions if a sequence of conflicting short transactions causes repeated restarting of the long transactions. If a transaction is found to be getting restarted repeatedly, conflicting transactions need to be temporarily blocked to enable the transaction to finish. Okay, and this is all about your timestamp ordering protocols. Now, problems with timestamp ordering protocol is there will be no deadlock. Deadlock is not present in timestamp ordering protocol. Okay, but problem is that cascading rollback. Any transaction that has a read a data item written by TJ must abort. This can lead to cascading rollback, that is chain of rollback. Okay, cascading rollback may be a problem in case of timestamp ordering protocol. A solution to this type of problem are a transaction is structured in such a way that its writes are performed at the end of its processing. Okay, at the same time, all writes of transactions form an atomic action. That is, no transaction may execute while a transaction is being written. And to avoid this cascading rollback, when T1, T2, two transactions are there, all the write operation of transactions should perform at last. Okay, write transaction of T2 also performed at last. Then wait for the data to be committed before reading it. Okay. Thomas Wright rule. Okay. In basic timestamping protocol says that whenever T9, T10 two transactions are there, then read write and the order of the transaction is T9 to T10. Then whenever read write conflict is there, that means the order is your T9 to T10, then it will not create problem. Okay. Similarly, but whenever write write conflicting is there, in this case, that means after very longer period of time, the write operation happens here. This is written as blind write. It will treated as a blind write. And in this case, this write write also will not create any conflict according to Thomas Wright rule. But according to timestamp protocol, this write operation cannot be performed. It has to be, this whole transaction has to be rolled back and this transaction has to be scheduled later on. But according to Thomas Wright rule, whenever such kind of write operation will create problem, then this will not treat as problem. This can be allowed. Okay. One of the problem of basic timestamp ordering protocol is that it does not guarantee recoverable schedule. A modification to the basic timestamp ordering protocol that relaxes the conflict serializability can be used to provide greater concurrency by rejecting obsolete write operations. These are known as obsolete write operations. Okay, these obsolete write operations can be allowed. Okay. TI issues read queue remains the same in case both timestamping ordering protocol and for Thomas Wright rule this is same. And if TS of TI is less than read timestamp of queue, TI is aborted, rollback and is restarted with a new timestamp. This is also same as your um, um, timestamping protocol. But whenever TS of TI is less than write timestamp of queue, TI is attempting to write an obsolete value of Q, hence the write operation can be ignored. This write operation can be ignored, but in case of in case of timestamping protocol, these write operations cannot be performed. The whole transaction has to be rolled back and the transaction has to be scheduled later on. And this is the difference between Thomas Wright rule and your timestamping protocol. And timestamping protocol allows conflict serializability, or it guarantees conflict serializability. And Thomas Wright rule makes use of view serializability by deleting obsolete write operation from the transaction that issue them. That means timestamping protocol guarantees conflict serializability, and your Thomas Wright rule allows view serializability. This is all about your timestamping protocol. Okay, thank you.